When the Buddha appeared in northern India over 2,500 years ago, he did not enter a world that lacked spirituality. On the contrary, he was born into a civilization saturated with gods, rituals, and sacred explanations for nearly every aspect of life. The religious atmosphere of his time was dominated by Brahmanism, a tradition rooted in the Vedas, where cosmic order was believed to be maintained by powerful deities and elaborate sacrificial rites. At the center of this worldview stood the idea of a creator or cosmic ruler, often associated with Brahma or Prajapati, who brought the universe into being, sustained it through divine will, and determined the moral fate of all living beings. For most people, this belief system provided comfort and certainty. Life was precarious, filled with disease, famine, social hierarchy, and sudden death. To believe that suffering had a divine reason, or that it was the result of pleasing or displeasing a god, offered a sense of meaning in an unpredictable world. Rituals promised protection, prayers offered hope, and sacrifices were believed to secure favor from unseen powers. The universe, in this view, was not random or impersonal. It was governed by intention, purpose, and authority. Alongside Brahmanism, there existed a vibrant landscape of ascetic movements, philosophers, and wanderers who questioned aspects of ritual religion but often retained some belief in cosmic controllers or eternal principles. Even when thinkers rejected sacrifice, many still assumed a highest being, a universal self, or a metaphysical source from which all things originated. The question was rarely whether gods existed, but which gods were supreme, and how humans should relate to them. Into this world stepped the Buddha. And what makes his teaching so radical is not that he loudly attacked these beliefs, but that he quietly stepped outside their entire framework. He did not proclaim war on the gods, nor did he attempt to replace them with a new divine figure. Instead, he shifted the axis of spiritual inquiry itself. While others asked, who created the world, or which god controls destiny? The Buddha asked something far more unsettling: why is there suffering, and how does it arise in direct experience? This shift may appear subtle, but its implications were profound. By refusing to ground his teaching in a creator deity, the Buddha undermined the assumption that meaning, morality, or liberation depended on divine authority. He spoke to people who believed their lives were shaped by the will of gods and gently redirected their attention inward, toward the processes of craving, ignorance, and clinging operating moment by moment in their own minds. Importantly, the Buddha did not deny the existence of gods as imagined by his contemporaries. Devas and Brahmās appear throughout the early texts, described as powerful, luminous beings inhabiting refined realms of existence. Yet their presence does not restore the old hierarchy. These beings are not creators of the universe, nor judges of human souls. They are part of the same conditioned reality as humans, subject to impermanence, bound by karma, and ultimately unable to escape suffering without insight. In a culture where divine creation explained both the origin of the cosmos and the justification of social order, the Buddha's position was quietly revolutionary. By removing the creator God from the center of spiritual life, he removed the final external authority to whom responsibility could be deferred. Suffering was no longer a punishment, a test, or a divine mystery. It was a natural process, arising from causes that could be understood and therefore ended. This was the world into which the Buddha spoke, a world full of gods, yet still filled with suffering. And it was precisely because the gods could not solve the human problem that his teaching began, not with belief, but with direct investigation of reality itself. One of the most striking features of the Buddha's teaching is not what he explained, but what he deliberately refused to explain. In a religious culture obsessed with origins, who created the universe, when it began, whether it was shaped by a supreme intelligence, the Buddha consistently declined to answer such questions. This silence was not an evasion, nor a lack of philosophical depth. It was a precise and intentional refusal to engage in inquiries that, in his view, did nothing to alleviate suffering. Again and again in the early discourses, the Buddha is asked questions about the beginning of the world, the first cause of existence, or the ultimate creator behind all phenomena. Is the universe eternal or not? Was it created or uncreated? Is there a supreme being who designed it all? Each time, the Buddha redirects the conversation. He does not say that the questioner is foolish. He does not replace one metaphysical answer with another. Instead, he points out that such questions do not lead to liberation. They do not weaken craving, dissolve ignorance, or bring the mind closer to freedom. At the heart of this refusal lies the principle of Pāli dependent origination. According to this insight, phenomena arise not from a single originating act, but from conditions. When certain conditions are present, something comes to be. When those conditions cease, it passes away. This applies to physical events, mental states, and even the sense of self. There is no need for a divine will guiding the process, just as there is no need for a creator to explain the flame of a lamp when oil and a wick are present. From this perspective, the idea of a first cause becomes unnecessary and incoherent. If everything depends on conditions, then searching for an absolute beginning is like searching for the first link in a circle. Even if one imagines a creator God, the question immediately arises, what conditions gave rise to that God? If the God is said to be unconditioned, eternal, and outside causality, then the explanation breaks the very logic it tries to uphold. The Buddha saw that such explanations do not resolve confusion, they simply push it one step further back. More importantly, the belief in a creator subtly shifts attention away from lived experience. When suffering is attributed to divine will, cosmic design, or a primordial act of creation, the immediate causes of suffering are overlooked. The Buddha's teaching does the opposite. It brings the inquiry into the present moment. Suffering arises because of craving. Craving arises because of feeling. Feeling arises because of contact. Contact arises because of conditions that can be observed directly, here and now. Liberation, therefore, does not depend on understanding how the universe began, but on understanding how suffering is being manufactured in this very moment. The Buddha illustrated this point through striking metaphors. He compared speculative metaphysics to a man wounded by a poisoned arrow who refuses treatment until he knows who shot the arrow, what caste they belong to, and what material the arrow was made of. By the time all questions are answered, the man is already dead. In the same way, obsession with cosmic origins delays the only inquiry that truly matters: how to end suffering before it overwhelms the mind. This refusal to posit a creator God was not an act of rebellion for its own sake. It was an act of compassion. By removing the question of creation from the spiritual path, the Buddha removed a powerful distraction. He offered a teaching that does not depend on belief in unverifiable beginnings, but on insight into conditionality. The universe does not need a first command to explain suffering. Suffering has its own logic, and because it arises from causes, it can also cease when those causes are understood and abandoned. In this way, the Buddha's silence speaks louder than any doctrine. It tells us that freedom is not found in the distant past or in a divine act beyond human reach. It is found in seeing clearly how things come to be, how they pass away, and how the mind can be released from the habit of asking the wrong questions while ignoring the truth unfolding right in front of it. Although the Buddha rejected the idea of a creator God, he did not present a universe stripped of divine beings. On the contrary, the early Buddhist texts are populated with devas as Brahmās and celestial beings who possess immense power, subtle forms, and lifespans that far exceed those of humans. This often surprises modern readers and leads to a common misunderstanding. If gods exist in Buddhism, why are they not worshipped, and why are they not considered ultimate authorities? The answer lies in the Buddha's radical redefinition of what it means to be higher or lower in the cosmos. In the Buddha's vision, gods are not creators standing outside the universe. They are inhabitants within it. They arise through conditions, just as humans do. Reborn into refined realms as a result of past karma, ethical conduct, and meditative absorption. Their brilliance and longevity may inspire awe, but these qualities do not grant freedom. Like all conditioned beings, gods are subject to impermanence. When the conditions supporting their existence dissolve, even the highest Brahma falls, dies, and is reborn elsewhere. Often in far less fortunate realms. This perspective overturns the traditional hierarchy of divine supremacy. Power does not equal wisdom, and longevity does not equal liberation. A god may command entire realms, yet still be bound by ignorance. A human, through insight, may surpass the gods by realizing the nature of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. For this reason, the Buddha is repeatedly portrayed in the texts not as a servant of gods, but as their teacher. Devas approach him with questions, seeking clarity about the Dhamma, because they, too, are trapped within the cycle of birth and death. One of the most revealing accounts appears in the Brahmajala Sutta, where the Buddha explains how belief in a creator Brahma arises. According to this analysis, a being is reborn in a high Brahma realm and remains there alone for a long time. Eventually, other beings appear, reborn into that realm due to their karma. The first being, seeing others arrive after him, assumes he must be their creator. The others, seeing him already present, assume he is their maker. From this shared misunderstanding, the belief in a supreme creator is born not from divine truth, but from ignorance, limited memory, and mistaken inference. This explanation is deeply unsettling, because it does not attack belief with mockery or denial. It simply shows how easily metaphysical certainty can arise from incomplete perception. Even gods can be wrong about their own nature. Even the most exalted beings can misinterpret their experience and mistake temporal priority for ultimate authority. In doing so, the Buddha exposes the fragile psychological roots of creation myths without needing to refute them aggressively. The most radical implication of this teaching is not that gods are unimportant, but that they are not free. They cannot erase karma. They cannot grant liberation. They cannot intervene to save a being from the consequences of craving and ignorance. When their accumulated merit runs out, they fall, just like any other being. Their suffering may be more subtle, but it is still suffering. By placing gods within the same framework of dependent origination as humans, the Buddha removed the final refuge of spiritual dependency. There is no being, however powerful or luminous, who can walk the path on our behalf. Liberation does not come from pleasing higher beings, securing divine favor, or ascending to heavenly realms. It comes from seeing clearly the nature of conditioned existence and letting go. In this universe, the highest status is not godhood, but awakening. An awakening is not a gift bestowed by a creator, but a realization available to any being, human or divine, who is willing to look directly at reality and abandon the illusions that bind even the gods themselves. With the Creator God removed from the center of spiritual life, something unprecedented takes its place in the Buddha's teaching, direct seeing. The authority that once belonged to divine revelation. Sacred ritual, or inherited belief, is quietly transferred to immediate experience. This shift is not merely philosophical, it is psychological and existential. It marks the end of religious dependency and the beginning of personal responsibility in its deepest sense. The Buddha repeatedly warned against accepting teachings simply because they were ancient, widely believed, or spoken by respected authorities. In the Kalama Sutta, he addressed a community confused by competing doctrines and offered a radical guideline: do not believe something because it is tradition, scripture, rumor, or the word of a revered teacher. Instead, observe for yourself whether a teaching leads to greed or to its ending, to hatred or to its ending, to delusion or to its ending. Truth, in this framework, is not something to be inherited. It is something to be verified. This stance fundamentally alters the role of faith. Faith in Buddhism is not blind belief in unseen powers or cosmic narratives. It is confidence born from practice, strengthened through insight, and refined by understanding. The practitioner does not surrender responsibility to a God who forgives or condemns, but learns to see how actions, intentions, and mental states shape experience moment by moment. There is no prayer that can erase unwholesome action, no divine pardon that suspends cause and effect. Karma operates impersonally, without favoritism, and without appeal. Ethics, therefore, no longer rest on obedience to a divine command. They arise naturally from understanding. When one sees that harmful actions lead to suffering and wholesome actions lead to peace, moral conduct becomes an expression of wisdom rather than fear. One refrains from harm not because a god forbids it, but because one understands its consequences. In this way, morality becomes internal, intimate, and inseparable from insight. Meditation plays a central role in this transformation, because it is the laboratory where belief is replaced by observation. Through mindfulness and concentration, the practitioner watches sensations arise and pass, observes thoughts dissolve, and sees the sense of I flicker and fade. What was once taken on faith becomes directly known. Impermanence is no longer a doctrine, it is felt in the breath. Non-self is no longer a theory. It is seen in the absence of control over the mind. Suffering is no longer an abstract problem, it is recognized in clinging itself. This approach was profoundly threatening to established religious structures. If liberation depends on direct seeing rather than ritual performance, the authority of priests collapses. If insight matters more than birth or caste, social hierarchies lose their spiritual justification. If no god stands as judge or savior, fear-based devotion loses its grip. The Buddhist teaching did not need to attack institutions directly, it simply made them irrelevant to the core problem of suffering. What emerges in their place is a radically honest spirituality. There is nowhere to hide, no external being to blame, and no shortcut through divine favor. But there is also no condemnation, no eternal judgment, and no cosmic guilt. The path is open, pragmatic, and compassionate. It begins exactly where one is, with the mind as it is, and proceeds through understanding rather than belief. In shifting the center of gravity from faith to direct seeing, the Buddha did not strip life of meaning. He relocated meaning from the heavens to the immediacy of experience. Freedom is no longer promised after death by a Creator's grace. It is discovered here and now, through seeing clearly how suffering arises and how it can end, without dependence on anything beyond one's own capacity to awaken. In the modern world, the question of God has become increasingly fraught. For some, traditional belief has collapsed under the weight of science, historical criticism, and moral doubt. For others, faith remains, but often accompanied by quiet uncertainty or inner conflict. Between rigid belief and outright nihilism, many people feel suspended in a spiritual vacuum, unsure what to trust, unsure where meaning can be found. It is precisely here that the Buddha's path without a creator reveals its enduring relevance. The Buddha does not ask us to replace belief in a God with belief in nothing. He offers a third way. The universe he describes as lawful but not designed, meaningful but not commanded, compassionate but not controlled by an external will. Suffering exists not because a creator failed or because humans sinned, but because ignorance and craving operate according to conditions. And freedom is possible not through obedience or divine favor, but through understanding those conditions deeply enough to let them cease. This teaching speaks directly to the modern sense of responsibility. Without a creator to assign purpose, meaning is no longer given, it is cultivated. One is not born to fulfill a divine plan, but to awaken from confusion. This can feel unsettling at first, because it removes the comfort of being watched over or guided from above. Yet it is also profoundly liberating. If no God created your suffering, no God demands your submission as the price of relief. Liberation is not a reward, it is a natural consequence of wisdom. In a time when many people reject religion because it seems to demand belief without evidence, the Buddha's insistence on direct seeing feels strikingly contemporary. His teaching does not compete with science, because it does not claim to explain the universe's origin or ultimate substance. It concerns itself with experience, with the dynamics of the mind, and with the possibility of freedom from suffering. In this sense, it offers meaning without myth, ethics without commandments, and depth without dogma. Perhaps the most radical aspect of this path is the responsibility it places on the individual. No one else can walk it for you. Not a god, not a teacher, not even the Buddha himself. He can point the way, describe the terrain, and warn of illusions, but each step must be taken alone. This is not a lonely path, but it is an honest one. It refuses to comfort us with the idea that someone else will save us, and instead trusts that clarity, compassion, and wisdom are capacities already present within the human mind. In this light, the Buddha's rejection of creator deities is not an act of negation, but of confidence in the possibility of awakening. Without dependence, confidence that truth does not require divine endorsement, and confidence that suffering can end without appealing to forces beyond our control. The most unsettling idea, then, is not that there is no creator watching over us, but that freedom has always been within reach, waiting not for belief, but for understanding. And perhaps this is the quiet message that continues to resonate across centuries. You are not bound by a story written at the beginning of time. There is no cosmic authority to appease, no eternal judge to fear. There is only this moment, this mind, and the possibility, here and now, of seeing clearly enough to be free.